Let me ask you something honest. How many times this week did you get pulled into something that had nothing to do with you? A comment someone made, a headline that ruined your morning, an opinion that you couldn't let go. You were fine. Then something small happened, and suddenly you weren't fine. Sound familiar? You are not broken, you are not weak, but you are carrying something you were never supposed to carry, and it is costing you more than you realize. Think about the last argument you had. Not a big one, just a small, stupid, pointless one. About something that didn't matter, with someone you barely know. Over something you can't even remember now. How much energy did it take from you? How long did it sit in your chest afterward? How many hours of your life did it quietly steal? Now multiply that by every week, every month, every year. That is the invisible tax you are paying. Every single day. And nobody is forcing you to pay it. You are choosing it. Without knowing, you are choosing it. The Stoics had a word for this state. They called it being enslaved, not by chains, not by a tyrant, but by your own reactions, by your own need to respond, to judge, to resist, to fix what isn't yours to fix. Epictetus was a slave, an actual slave, and yet he was one of the freest human beings who ever lived. Because he understood something most of us will spend our whole lives missing. He said, "It is not things that disturb us. It is our judgments about things." Read that again. It is not things that disturb you. It is what you tell yourself about those things. So the question isn't what is happening to you. The question is, what are you doing with what is happening to you? And that right there, is what we are going to talk about today. Here is the brutal truth. Most of us are addicted to opinions, not just having them, sharing them, defending them, fighting for them, even when no one asked, even when nothing is at stake. And I don't mean opinions on things that matter. I mean the constant, relentless, exhausting commentary on everything. The weather, the traffic, what someone ate, how someone dressed, the political post, the viral video, the celebrity gossip, all of it, flooding through your mind, demanding a reaction. And here is what is terrifying about that. You think you are participating in life, but actually you are being consumed by it. Piece by piece, opinion by opinion, reaction by reaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote this in his private journal. He said we have the power to have no opinion, not fewer opinions, not quieter opinions, no opinion at all about things that do not concern us. When I first read that, I thought, that sounds passive, that sounds like giving up. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized something. That is not weakness. That is one of the rarest, most difficult disciplines a human being can develop. Here is why your current mindset is failing you. You believe that having an opinion is the same thing as being engaged. You believe that staying silent means you don't care. You believe that reacting quickly means you are paying attention. None of that is true. Having an opinion does not mean you are engaged. Sometimes it means you are just distracted. Staying silent does not mean you don't care. Sometimes it means you are wise enough to know what actually deserves your energy. Reacting quickly does not mean you are paying attention. It often means you are not thinking at all. There is an old expression, don't yuck someone else's yum, meaning, if someone loves something you don't understand, that is okay. If someone makes a choice you wouldn't make, that is also okay. Their choices are not a judgment of yours. Their preferences are not an argument you need to win. Thomas Jefferson once wrote that the best policy was this: something either picks your pocket or breaks your leg, or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you don't need a response. If it doesn't touch your life, your freedom, your values, let it be. That is not indifference. That is discernment. And discernment is a superpower that almost no one bothers to develop. Here is the real reason this matters. Every reaction you have costs you something: time, energy, clarity, peace. And most of the things we react to, they cost us everything, and they deserved nothing. So the question becomes this: what would your life look like if you stopped paying that price? What would your mind feel like if it wasn't constantly at war with things outside your control? What would your days look like if you chose deliberately what gets your attention? That is what Stoicism is actually about. Not coldness, not detachment, not caring. It is about being so clear on what matters that everything else simply falls away. And that kind of clarity, it doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from moving. Aristotle and his students would pace the covered walkways of the Lyceum for hours. They were called the Peripatetics, from the Greek word peripatein, to walk around. They believed that movement and thought were inseparable, that the body and the mind were not two different things, they were one. Nietzsche, one of the great thinkers of the modern world, said something remarkable. He said that only ideas born while walking have any real value, not ideas formed at the desk, not ideas written in a notebook. Ideas that arrive when your feet are moving and your mind is open. Now think about that. These were not lazy men. These were not people with nothing better to do. These were people who understood that stillness of the body often means stillness of the mind. And stillness of the mind in the wrong way can trap you. In the Stoic tradition, the mind was like a lake. When conditions are calm, the water is still, clear. You can see right to the bottom. But when wind comes, when storms arrive, the water churns. And in that chaos, nothing is visible, nothing is clear. Judgment fails, perspective disappears, reaction takes over. Walking is a way of calming that water. It is physical, yes, but it is also philosophical. When you walk, you create space between stimulus and response. And that space, that little gap, is where wisdom lives. The old man and his walks. There is a story I love. I think about it often. An old man, married for decades, was asked by a neighbor, "Do you and your wife ever argue?" He smiled, and he said, "We never fight, but I take a lot of walks." That's it. That is the whole philosophy right there. He didn't say they never disagreed. He didn't say they never got frustrated. He said he takes a lot of walks. Because he learned something that takes most of us a lifetime to figure out. You cannot solve a problem from inside the problem. You cannot find clarity when you are surrounded by noise. You cannot lead yourself if you never give yourself any distance. Distance is the gift that walking gives you. Not physical distance alone. Emotional distance. The ability to step back, breathe, let your nervous system settle, and then return. Not reactive, not defensive, not small, but returned, grounded, clear. I can tell you this from personal experience. I have never come home from a walk more angry than when I left. Never. Not once. I have come home tired, wet, cold, sore. But never more anxious, never more upset, never more confused. Even when the walk was short. Even when it was freezing outside. Even when I didn't want to go. Even when I thought I didn't have time. I always came back better. And that is a remarkable track record for anything in life. Most things let you down sometimes. Most habits have bad days. Walking never does. The return on that investment is consistent, every single time. Let's talk about what is actually happening when you walk, because it is not just about fresh air. It is not just about exercise. Something real is occurring inside you. When you walk, your body produces something called bilateral stimulation. Your left foot, your right foot, left, right. This rhythmic alternation activates both hemispheres of your brain simultaneously. The same process that therapists use in trauma treatment, because it allows the brain to process and integrate, instead of loop and replay. When you are anxious, your brain loops. It replays the same thought, adds a little fear, replays it again, adds more fear. It spirals inward, tighter and tighter, until the original thought is buried under a mountain of catastrophe. Walking breaks that loop. The rhythm interrupts the spiral. The movement forces your attention outward. A bird, a tree, the sound of your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air on your face, small things, real things. And in that contact with the real, the imagined begins to lose its grip. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said, "Look at things as they actually are, not as they appear when you are afraid, not as they seem when you are angry, but as they are, in the calm light of reason." That is what the Stoics called mild philosophy. Not intense, not dramatic, not heated, mild, steady, clear, like a candle in a dark room. Not a flashlight, not a spotlight, just a calm, consistent light that lets you see what is actually there. I want to tell you something personal. We rescued a dog. This wasn't planned. My kids promised they would walk it multiple times, enthusiastically, with absolute certainty that yes, they would do this, no problem. You can probably guess what happened. Within a week, I was the one walking the dog. Twice a day, every day. At first, I resented it a little. Not the dog, the obligation, the schedule, the feeling that my day now had these two fixed points that I didn't choose. But something shifted quietly, without me noticing. I started to realize the dog wasn't the one being walked. I was. Those two walks became the most important parts of my day. Not the calls I had, not the work I completed. Those 40 minutes of movement. That was where I did my best thinking. That was where I found my ideas. That was where some of my most important creative work was born. Not at a desk, not in front of a screen. Outside, moving, breathing. And I began to understand something the Stoics understood long ago. The body is not separate from the mind. When you honor the body, you free the mind. When you move the body, you unlock the mind. When you neglect the body, the mind suffers too. You cannot think your way to clarity. You have to move your way there. The command over yourself. Epictetus said that one of the clearest signs of progress is this. You get into fewer arguments. Not because you stopped having thoughts, but because you stopped needing to export every thought to the world. That is what self-command looks like in practice. Not rigidity, not suppression, not pretending you feel nothing. Self-command is the quiet discipline of choosing what to do with what you feel. And walking develops that discipline. Because the walk itself is a practice in self-command. You feel frustrated, you choose to walk instead of react. You feel overwhelmed. You choose to move instead of spiral. You feel pulled toward an argument. You choose the door instead of the fight. Every single walk is a small act of self-mastery. And small acts of self-mastery repeated daily over months, over years, They compound into something extraordinary. They compound into a person who is genuinely different from who they were. The Stoics were deeply interested in one question. Not what do I want, not what do I deserve, but who am I becoming? Because they understood that character is not fixed. Character is cultivated daily by small decisions, by what you choose to do with your frustration, by how you respond when things don't go your way, by whether you can hold your tongue when the easier thing is to speak, by whether you can take a walk when the easier thing is to argue. That is virtue in action, not the dramatic kind, not the heroic kind, the ordinary, daily, unglamorous kind, the kind that nobody sees but you, the kind that matters most. Let me give you the practical version of this, because philosophy without practice is just poetry, beautiful but not useful. Start with one walk a day. That is it. One walk. Leave your phone behind, or at least put it in your pocket, screen down. Don't listen to a podcast, don't take a call. Just walk, and let your mind do what it needs to do. Sometimes it will be uncomfortable at first. Your mind will bring up things you've been avoiding. Let it. That is the point. Let the thoughts surface. Watch them. Don't grab at them. Don't fight them. Just walk and breathe and let them pass. After a few weeks, you will notice something. The thoughts that used to hijack your day, they are smaller now. The things that used to trigger you, you see them coming before they arrive. The arguments you used to start, you find you just don't want them anymore. Not because you suppressed anything, but because you found something better to do with that energy. If you want to go further, take 2 walks a day, morning and evening. One to set the day, one to close it. Morning walk to arrive at clarity before the world starts asking things of you. Evening walk to release whatever the day put on your shoulders. And when something upsets you during the day, before you respond, before you type that message, before you say that thing, walk, even 5 minutes, even around the block. You will come back different. I promise you that. The Stoics had a practice called the view from above, imagining yourself rising up, looking down at your situation from a great height, seeing how small the argument is, how temporary the problem is, how vast the world is compared to this one moment of friction. Walking gives you that view, literally and figuratively. It pulls you out of the close, cramped space of your own frustration and puts you back in the larger world, where perspective lives, where wisdom has room to breathe. Here is what I need you to hear, and I need you to really hear it. The person you have been is not the person you have to remain. The patterns you have carried are not the patterns you are sentenced to. The reactions that have cost you relationships, opportunities, peace of mind, they are not you. They are habits, and habits can change. The old version of you, the reactive one, the one that had an opinion about everything, the one that stayed up arguing in comment sections, the one that carried every slight for days. That version is done. That version served its purpose, and now it is finished. The old you is dead. What rises in its place is something quieter, something harder, something that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful, something that doesn't need applause to stay the course, something that can stand in the middle of chaos and choose, deliberately, consciously, freely. You belong to no one's drama anymore. Not the news cycle, not the comment section, not the argument that has no winner, not the opinion war that burns everything and resolves nothing. You are not a leaf blown by every wind. You are the roots, deep, steady, unmoved by the storms above. You are the storm, not the kind that destroys, the kind that clears, the kind that comes through and leaves everything clean and quiet and new. And it starts with something impossibly simple. It starts with putting on your shoes. It starts with opening the door. It starts with one step and then another and then another. It starts with a walk. This is your year, but only if you claim it, and you claim it one walk at a time. If you made it this far, here is what I want to say to you. You already have everything you need to begin. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need a perfect plan or a perfect time. You need a door and legs and the willingness to move. That is it. That is the whole practice. If this video gave you something, a thought, a shift, a small spark, then I am asking you to do one thing. Subscribe. Not for me, for yourself. Because what we do here, week after week, is build that kind of life. Piece by piece, philosophy by philosophy, habit by habit. The kind of life where you are in command of yourself. The kind of life where your peace is not dependent on conditions. The kind of life the Stoics pointed toward, and that you deserve to reach. Subscribing is a small act, but every small act is a statement. A statement that says, I am choosing growth over comfort. I am choosing wisdom over noise. I am choosing to become someone who takes walks instead of arguments. That is self-mastery, and it is available to you right now. So before you close this video, before you scroll on to the next thing, I want to leave you with one question, and I want you to sit with it. Not answer it quickly, not dismiss it. Sit with it on your next walk. The question is this: what would change in your life if you became someone who never let things outside your control steal even one more hour of your peace,